Hello, everybody, and welcome to Gridiron Live video. So tonight it's with me and Chris. So obviously, known us before as Britball with the Brains. We've obviously not been on a show for a long time, so a few things have came out in the last couple of weeks about a return to football this season. So we thought we'd do a show to discuss it. We're also hoping to have Mick Tyler join us at 7:30. He said he would, so I'm just waiting to hear his response. So he actually joins our video. So we'll go through a bit of what we think Britball is going to do in 2021, and then we'll cover a little bit of questions from an article I wrote a couple of weeks ago about the UKFL potentially running a semi-pro league with Mick, and hopefully he can answer some questions for us going forward that we've had since that article went out. So first of all, Chris, either BAFA knew we were doing this, or they read your article the other week, because they've obviously just put out a new announcement.
Yeah, they've just kind of put out something directed more to the Scottish teams and the Welsh teams, just kind of addressing what we kind of knew, that the information regarding coming out of lockdown isn't really there at the moment. I know there was a timeline set out for England. Optimistic, I think, but we're all hopeful that obviously things start to sort of open up as safely and as soon as possible as well. So, yeah, there was that announcement, and I'm sure we'll kind of touch on that later when we kind of go through what we think is going to happen this year with Britball.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously good that they've noted that this is a change that might affect the Scottish and Welsh sides more than the English side of Britball. But yeah, we will get into that. So I guess the first thing is a 2021 season, yes or no?
I think we'll see some semblance of football. Whether it's necessarily deemed a competitive season, I have my doubts. Would I like to see one? Obviously. I just think there's still far too many unknowns. The timeline is far from complete, and here's us in March, and kind of as I alluded to in my article earlier this week, most teams would be kind of winding up their last couple of Sunday practices prior to the opening game of the season, and certainly up here in Scotland, we're going to be still in full lockdown for another sort of 2 months yet. So I think there'll be something, but what it is, I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess from our experience of playing football, a pre-season isn't hugely significant in Division 2. As far as I'm concerned, you see players not showing up until three weeks before the game, and then all of a sudden everybody's at training. And you know as well as I do that happens. Obviously, at Premiership level, Division 1 level, that's maybe a bit different. You can't just be throwing players into a season with minimal preseason. But again, for Division 2, it's not really a huge issue. But I guess, yes, I think a season will go ahead, but I think they're going to have to be very careful about how they do it. And that's something that we've got questions on here. So at the moment, they're scheduled in a season start date of the 27th of June, regular season to finish the 25th of September, and then finals to be held on the 30th of October. Now, you raised a few issues with this. Now, obviously, the preseason is one thing. So having a short preseason, as I said, that can be an issue, but I think really if teams want a way around that, that's not a problem. The 27th of June start is really 2 months late, 2 months later than normal, a little bit more than 2 months later. So can they fit the whole season in? Now, again, when we've played in the past few years, there's been times where teams aren't playing at all. So you have 4 games, then you have 6 weeks off. And normally that is down to the one concern that you have, which is officials.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of the dates, there's nothing sort of concrete. This is just kind of what's doing the rounds at the moment, and until anything sort of confirmed, there's not really obviously, we've got to go off by what we hear. I think, there is numerous concerns. I think when I worked, it was speaking about being a 14-week window for a season. Now, normally we have 19 weeks, and that's maybe doesn't sound that much, but when you think about it, it's a huge difference. And, a lot of that difference is going to come down to, teams obviously request when they're not going to be available to play. There's going to be some weekends where there's other things on. Now, okay, that you could say that's maybe not as much of an issue this year, but at the same time, it will be, because if we're able to be back playing, then there's probably going to be other things happening. You've even got things to consider, like teams will likely want weekends off for the Euros, for example, in the summer months. You're going to have a lot of guys that are going to want their teams to request those weekends off. But ultimately, in the span of a 19-week season, we still have, we don't have enough people becoming officials to cover games every week for every team. And these guys are traveling length and breadth of the country to officiate games. And, there are still games that go off without officials in a 19-week season. If you then put that into a 14-week season, you're simply going to have to proceed with way too many games without officials. And, the odd game here or there, you live with it. It's part of being an amateur sport. It's kind of what goes on. But when you try and reduce that by such a significant amount of time, you're going to start creating a lot of problems with a lot of games not having officials. And then you start have to decide, which games warrant them and which games don't. And that creates a whole host of new problems. That would be a big concern for me with a shortened season, that you're simply not going to have the time and the resources to be able to complete it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, so we've played where the officials have officiated our game in the early afternoon and then scooted across to officiate another game not far away. And that's happened a few times in Scotland in particular. I don't know if that happens down south. I can't say. So there is the potential of that, and really some of the officials, they might be more willing to do more games because, well, they're probably as bored as we all are right now, with not having stuff to do. So, I mean, there potentially is ways around it. You're right. I don't think having unofficiated games is the correct way to go about it. I think that you should have officiated games no matter what. So if you can't fulfill that, then that's where it starts to get tough, and they need to make a decision on whether having officials there is going to affect the quality of what we're getting. So I guess from that is you've got pre-season. So far we're saying that pre-season could be an issue for the higher levels, but for the Division 2, probably not such an issue. Officials is a big problem. That one could potentially be a showstopper for the entire league. Now, some of the suggestions that have come in groups, and there's loads of people coming out with different suggestions, is that we have a league that basically is run with no relegation and no promotion. So teams can play in their divisions, but there will be no relegation and no promotion. Now, personally, I don't really have an issue with that if it's not a full season. If it's a full season, I think you have to have promotion and relegation. But if it is not a full season, I don't see the issue with playing games knowing that you're not going to have that problem of having players walk away because you've got relegated in a season that maybe potentially half your team hasn't shown up on a week by week. So and we've got a comment here about it. So Will saying no pre-season isn't a problem for Division Two. How dare you?
I mean, in
Having played
fairness,
it.
Will, it would be a huge problem for me this year. Like, I don't know about anybody else, but the couch weight has definitely gotten to me being in lockdown for over a year. So, yeah, I mean, I understand both sides of it. Like, you've got to take in the safety element in the respect of, you got to teach rookie guys that have never played the game before how to safely tackle. You've got to teach them, all the basic fundamentals of playing football, the things that take a long time to introduce. There is going to be, and I did touch on it, I must admit, we spoke about like the lack of preseason, but you know, in many ways, fitness is going to be a big issue. Now, I appreciate that we're not all world class athletes. I'm sure there's some people out there that believe they are, and I'm sure there's some people out there that actually are. But there's a lot of us that aren't, and I think the thing is that you know there's been long periods of time where we've not even been able to access a gym, especially over the winter months recently. It's not like you can just spend all your time going out and doing the stuff outside when it's sort of minus 10 degrees and a foot of snow in the ground. So yeah, and that side of things, preseason would be important, but yeah, I also understand the element that for a lot of your Division Two teams that it might not be as big of an issue.
See, for me, the positions that are most in need in Britball are linemen. Now, if folk have gained 2 stone, all I'm saying is you might end up with more linemen than you normally have.
I mean, I guess the only problem with that comes when your wide receivers and your running backs have also put on 2 stone, and that's when things start to get ugly. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It would completely depend on the team. Some might think we could smash out a game after 4 weeks of practice, and to be honest, I'd be slightly concerned about people carrying that attitude. But at the same time, it really does just depend on the organization and the teams in that respect of things. But
Well,
I think another factor with the preseason side of things is also, none of us. I say none of us. I know some people got a couple of practices in it, during 2020, but the reality is the vast majority haven't practiced since the beginning of the year in 2020 before this all kind of lockdown stuff hit. And no one's played a competitive game since the beginning of September in 2019. I mean, that is going to take an effect on your guys, like and it's not like we were all free to go out and sort of build on skills and work with quarterbacks and receivers and stuff. We weren't even allowed to do stuff like that. So yeah, I think there is. I would certainly like there to be a preseason, but it's just one of those things that out of the issues that could possibly come up, it's not the biggest one.
well, I think your thoughts are mirrored by your coach. I think it depends where you see yourself in your division, and that's just what you're saying there. Is if you think you can go out and thump everybody, then might not have such an effect on you. But yeah, you're right. We've not been able to do anything. Even for us, obviously, we live not far from each other. We can't just go down to the park. Like it's just not allowed. So, and I don't know about everywhere else, but the police are out in force up here, stopping folk out their cars. So, it's not something that most people have done in the last while. And yeah, it does. One thing that I think a lot of people will find hard is you're right, is when rookies are coming in. If you're only getting a short preseason to teach rookies, then that's where potentially they will see an issue, and there may be problems, and people will go around safety and all these things, and how do we teach these guys in 4 weeks to get up and ready for a game? I I mean, the thing is, you can teach stuff now. You can't teach physical like technique on the spot coaching, but you can start to implement stuff now to say, here's the position we want you to be in. Practice this position at home. And obviously you'll never get used to the active blocking and shedding blocks and all that kind of thing, but you can get certain elements of your down now, so that when you come to put it to the field, it's maybe not such a slow progression. And obviously, again, there'll be ones that people that are just joining teams when the season starts. So they won't have had any of this, and they'll be walking on the field going, "Fancy game of American football. When do you start?" And you go, 3 weeks, and they're like, "Oh," and that's the kind of thing that you just don't know. I guess something else that's come in over the last couple of days is that it is potentially area games. So we call it inter-county if you like. So basically, we'll use Scotland as an example because they're really easy to cover. So in Scotland, we have, let me see, let me just check this. We have how many teams? 8 teams, right? So
Unless
we have
I've missed
8 teams.
anyone.
Well, who have we got? You've got Aberdeen, Glasgow, Clyde Valley, Greece. Who am I missing? I'm missing
Dunfermline,
someone.
Edinburgh, and EKP.
EKP. They're going to probably kill me for that.
It's all right. They've already killed me before.
So there's 8 teams right now. Some people have said, "Oh, well, what we should do is we could have a Scottish league." Now, I don't think you can have the Wolves playing against Dunfermline.
I mean, with the greatest
against...
respect in the world to Dunfermline, we know nothing about them. They have not played a league game. Putting them up against a Premier Division side like the Edinburgh Wolves has to be up there as one of the most stupid ideas I've ever heard in my life.
Well,
so,
for instance, when we were a rookie team, actually, it was even before our rookie year, we had East Kilbride come and do a joint practice.
It was in our rookie year because we did it midway through the season.
and even that was rough.
Well, we scrimmaged against the Pirates sort of during the season when they were sort of, up there, the top team in the north. And I think we lost about 12 players to injury that day. So it wouldn't be smart. There would have to be some sort of system. But then, you would get the same issues like, are you going to end up with the London Warriors having a season against the London Blitz A and the London Blitz B? I mean, just
feel right. London, to be fair, London be fine. London have so many teams.
But then that's what I mean. It sort of comes down to how you split these things as well. I think you could have some sort of regional thing. And the thing is that when you're looking at Scotland as an example, one thing that was spoken about in this announcement was obviously the idea floated of sort of regional competition. And I put that in the article that I wrote. I put a couple of ideas in there. You can check it out. There would have to be a lot of things fixed. You would have to kind of come to an understanding, because naturally you'd maybe want to say, right, okay, well, if you take Scotland, for example, we'll put, 4 teams in a top tier and 4 teams in a bottom tier, as it were, to split it. But then you'd have the issue of there's 3 Division 2 teams, there's 4 Division 1 teams, and there's 1 Premier Division team. So 3 teams would have to go with the Premier Division and 1 team would have to go with the Division 2. And, who do you send where? It all becomes sort of a bit of an issue in that respect. But I think it's probably up there as one of the most likely solutions to keep that regional based stuff. Because especially when we're talking about Scotland at the moment, right now, when we get let out of lockdown or whatever we're at the moment, we are going back to a tier system. And when we go into this tier system, it's going to completely depend on how well your region's doing. Within your number per 100,000 people, and whereas places like Aberdeen are up at 29 or whatever, something along those lines. I'm no health expert. And then you've still got places that are at 185. You're still not going to be allowed to have Aberdeen play someone down in that area for that sort of reason. So we're all going to be coming out of this at different rates, which is why I kind of allude back to my first point about, will there be some sort of season? Yes. Will it be competitive? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing is for sure. I would guarantee that the Wolves and the AKP Pirates want to play each other
Mm.
because they're forever vying about who's the best team in Scotland. So it would give us a determined answer to that one for this year. So I think you're right. I think there is a potential for inter-county areas to play. I say, using Scotland as an example, you could split the league into two sets of four. Um, you could obviously just have the whole eight and they all play each other, but really I don't think it's fair on the new rookie teams to be playing against Edinburgh, even if their head coach is a consultant at the new rookie team. But the chances that is, in a way to pop up a comment here, is the chances that the season is competitive is slim, and there's a and there's a few things that will stand in the way of that happening. As Steve Price is saying, no chance is competitive. So I think I think there certainly is that feeling in a lot of players here that why would you play a season if it wasn't for anything? And they've got a point. Like we've spoke on numerous occasions about American football isn't something you should just show up to and not because you can get hurt like really badly as well. Um, and really, if you're not playing for anything, is it worth risking
And
yourself?
I think the thing is as well is adding on to that point is it's not just you can get hurt. It's other people can as well. Like
Mhm.
if you don't play safe, or if you don't block for a guy, like all these things, you're risking not just hurting yourself but hurting someone else as well. So yeah, if guys aren't really in it, you know, is it really worth playing? And as you say, one thing again I floated out in the piece I put out was about this half season. I actually did the same kind of article last year when we were all feeling very optimistic that we'd be in lockdown for 3 weeks and this would all blow over, and here we are a year later, and I was 27 the last time I had a birthday outdoors, and I'm going to be 30 before I get my next one outdoors. So that's banter in itself. Um, but and one thing I spoke about was this, splits, that half a season. So each team in each division only plays each other once. And kind of the feedback I got on that was, it's not fair on travel. It's worse for some teams than others. And then if you have two teams that ultimately it comes down to one game to see who gets relegated. If you're a team, you know, I'll just say two Premier Division teams. I'm not going to name names because somebody will use it as an excuse to say I'm trying to pick on a team and I'm not. But if there's two Premier Division teams that are in trouble and it comes down to the head-to-head match to basically see who stays up, and they're only playing each other once, who gets home field advantage?
Yeah.
And I understand that point of view, but ultimately travel's not fair anyway. We played in Aberdeen for years, and I don't think there was a single season where we didn't travel more than any other team in our division. So sometimes it's just something you have to live with. But I
Yeah.
understand that point. But then I also think, well, maybe a way around that is, as you say, right, no relegation, because I do understand that in a year like this, you could lose a lot of guys who maybe are a bit worried about playing still. Availability could become a problem in a condensed season. And ultimately, if your club spent 15 years working their backside off to get themselves into the Premier Division established, you don't want to get yourself knocked out of that division because of a freak year where we're trying to force through a season. So yeah, I mean, you could say, right, there's no promotion, no relegation, but then it comes ultimately down to what are you playing for?
Yeah. And I don't know what Stu Galloway is saying here. No, we're not. Not sure what he's on about. Steve's saying, I reckon the game format will be different to running clock or shorter periods, maybe even 9 or 10 aside. Can see it being what we're used for. Hence Aldo, maybe just scrimmage practice to retake and prepare for next year. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
potential.
I mean, it's one thing, again, I feel like I'm plugging here, and I kind of am, but it covers a lot of this. what I wrote was, you know, more, you know, the kind of the more realistic view for me of this season is that there isn't one, but, you know, membership might start in, you know, July, and that runs into this year and next year.
Yeah, well,
and
that's
that
something
would
I was
allow
going to go on to.
teams to play a couple of pre-season, not pre-season, but kind of friendlies or whatever, once things are a lot clearer and safer and whatnot, and they've had a chance to get guys sort of sharp, or game sharp again before the start of the real pre-season work for 2022. But I think, you know, you'd find difficulty, and I know you said we're going to touch on it, but the membership would have to cover both years if there was a requirement for paying membership fees to play these games, which there will, because they'll need insurance. But I think if that was the case, it would have to cover this year and next to allow teams to play a couple of friendly games, and practice as well. So there is that element to it too.
Yeah, and it's something we discussed not just with ourselves, but with other people as in the community as well. Is that you're right? The biggest issue now is that Bath obviously never give us our fees back. Now, I have no problem with them giving us half of them back. However, they should have just kept them all and said it runs into the 2021 season. They should have just done that, because it would have meant that people would have trusted them a little bit more to do this. Now, they're obviously going to go into this next season. They're going to expect us to pay fees this year and next year. There's no way folk are doing that. So you're right. I think that if there is going to be a potential season, whether it is competitive or not, or you're allowed to play scrimmages or not, I think that if they come out with fees, they have to cover whatever's left of this season and next season. And I think that will kind of get everybody a bit more willing to pay them before everything starts. So what I've got, we've not got any other comments other than Stu saying I think we're the only country that play 15-minute quarters. So it'd be good to try it out. I'm not sure what he means by that, but so what we've got Mick in the chat, so I'm just going to invite him in. Obviously, if you've got any questions, fire them in the comments. I've got questions from the articles that I wrote, so we'll get Mick in and have a look. Evening, Mick. How you doing?
Gentlemen, you okay?
Doing well.
Good.
So
we've got Clemson there, have we?
Yeah. Always.
What's Sean?
Yeah, I'm LSU. So
same here.
Well, we were over at the national championship in January 2020. So there's a bit of rivalry between us.
Which game were you at? Which game
the New Orleans National Championship.
LSU Clemson.
Oh, you went to the final. Oh, right, you went together. Right. Ooh, but that was interesting. Yeah,
that was great fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a bit of rivalry.
Well, I went to the A&M game, the last regular season game. That was a bit of an experience, but no, I would have. The championship would have been even better. I would guess.
I think I was there for about 2 hours after. Yeah. So, sorry guys, are you getting feedback on my end?
I think it might be Mick's end.
Oh. What do I need to do?
I don't know if it's just maybe turn your volume down a bit.
Okay, 1 second.
It's all right. I can double hear myself.
Yeah.
It's bad enough hearing you once.
You young lads with technology, you're quite
to be fair, we're not much better. So, Mick, you're the managing director of UKFL. So, what we're going to ask, we're just going to ask a couple of questions that were up.
Yeah,
so,
go ahead. Fine.
But first of all, we're just going to ask, like, what's your background before and during American football up until this point, and where did the idea come from?
Well, I first got into American football in the late 80s when it started on Channel 4. I was at the Leicester Panthers for about 5 years. I was only young, so I was just part of the game day team there. From 87, 88 till 92. And then I gave it up because I had a young family and a career and just couldn't find the time to fit it in. And then when I moved up to the northeast with my current wife, I just went down the park with a grandchild one day and seen the DC Presidents playing, just practicing. Went over, spoke to them, and a few days later, I'm involved in the club. So I was there for a short while, and then I set up the Newcastle Vikings in 2014 with Ben Johnson and John Rooney, Graham Kelly, and quite a number of players. And I think you know the rest. I mean, we've been in the same division, haven't we, for pretty much all but 1 year, I think. Yeah, it's been a long old hike, and I pity you because you have to come the other way every game. We only have to go once a year. So, and then in 2018, I've been frustrated with the lack of commercial acumen in the league for many, many years. And it was something we tried to do at the Vikings with limited success. And I just took the view that, we wanted to start on the commercial side, and we felt that the best way to start would be to we've got to get eyes on the game. So that's why we started live streaming. We did that for a couple of years. And then it was lockdown really that prompted, the speed with which we've done stuff, because we all three of us, Rooney, David and myself, we all spent 30 hours a week plus on football, and all of a sudden we had no football. So, we decided to spend 1 day a week every Friday during lockdown. We were at my place, and we just started putting things together and working on the plan and developing it. We had many, many meetings with, lots of particular partners, including BAFA. And we just developed it to a point where we thought about using existing teams and just developing those. We went against that idea because we felt there was too much tribalism already there, and it would be harder to convince people that it was the right thing to do than if we just simply set up new teams ourselves and did it that way. So that's really how we got to this point. The frustrating thing has been, you go to the games like I do. We can watch football in America, we can watch football in London, and we all pay to do it. Why can't we, pay to watch our local team? No one goes to watch British football. The quality is not good enough. That's the bottom line. And some people will shout at me for saying that, but generally speaking, with one or two exceptions, it's not of a quality that people pay money to watch.
Yeah, we've seen something really interesting in Aberdeen, actually. One of the ice hockey teams up here decided to go from basically having their normal to promoting their game massively and getting crowds in. And me and Chris have been at a few games where it's been rammed, like sellout crowd. So I don't know. I'd say that it obviously is possible. So it'd be interesting to see. So in terms of affiliation with BAFA, what kind of level does that go to?
Well, we've kept them aware of everything we've been doing. If you go to our website, there is a letter which they've given to us. We asked them to give us a recommendation. They wouldn't go that far because I think they have some plans to maybe look at some stuff themselves. But they have given us a document that says that we've been speaking to them and they're happy with our plans. They fit in with their 10-year vision of the game. We're not going to do radical things that are going to spoil it for everybody. We're just going to try and make the game a bit better.
So I think obviously we've seen sort of the website and the promotion, but can you just sum up as best as you can, like what is the plan?
The plan is that we want to go with 8 teams on a semi-professional basis starting in May 2023. It'll be a short, sharp season, May, June, July. All the teams will play in stadiums, and it will be a mini NFL, if you like. We want to try and copy what they do at London and just make it a proper day out. And all the plans that we've put in place have been based on fan experience. As a fan myself, and I'm sure you're the same, you're sat there in the same gear as I wear. You've been to America and paid your own hard-earned money to watch this game. You want to go and have a good time. And that's what we're trying to do. And
Yeah.
you know, there's still room for fresh ideas if people have them. You know, we're not rigid in that we're saying we know everything and we know what needs doing. But you know, we've taken enough briefings from people, and we still take every day. We have conversations about, well, could we do this or could we do that, or would this be a good idea? And you know, the day you stop doing that is the day you get stagnant. So you know, we'd be open to many ideas. So, for instance, I'll open this up to you lads and the audience. You know, one of the things we've been asked since we released is, where are the teams going to be? And people made all sorts of comments about the generic map that we put on there, saying there's nothing in Scotland and there's nothing in Wales. It was a generic map, you know. But we've been sitting down and we're now discussing where to have them, and the criteria we're using is, there's many, but the four main ones are demographics. There's 66 million people live in the UK. Okay, divide that by 8. We want to try and get as close to 7.8 million people watching each team. You know, it's difficult because we've started the project, so we've got data now that tells us by postcode how many people live in each area. So the first thing is we want to try and cover as many areas as we can. Now, there's a couple of obvious ones which stick out, which just don't stack up. Northern Ireland is the first one. You know, there's only 1.8 million people live in Northern Ireland, according to the data we've got. It's not enough to substantiate a team, nowhere near. Mm-hmm. At the moment, funnily enough, the Northeast doesn't substantiate enough people to get a team. You know, it's the 10th most popular out of the research that we've done. So we've got some decisions to make on that. You know, so Scotland does. You know, it does. It's got 5.4 million people live there, so it qualifies to have a team. Most of those live in Glasgow, Edinburgh, sort of, you know, that central belt, if you like. But you know, from Aberdeen, that's not that too bad, is it? It's not a long way to travel compared to what you have been doing to watch a team. So a question that we're asking, so that's one demographic, is the stadiums, you know, where the stadiums are, because we've got a very, very strict criteria on that. We want to try and get the stadium in the centre of the area that, you know, the vans are involved in. So that affects the fan experience. So my question to you lads and to anybody that's listening is, you know, what's a reasonable amount of time and a reasonable amount of mileage that you would travel to support a local team, bearing in mind you're going to go to 5 home games, and ideally you'd want to go some away games as well. Is it 50 miles? Is it 100 miles?
Well, something that's interesting about that is I actually did an article on how teams in certain areas support themselves, basically, and how the demographics of the area prove that certain places shouldn't have teams, and certain places should have teams. So, like, me and Chris travel 2.5 hours for training. You know, so we're not. We're not.
You're not typical.
No, we're not typical though. We've been around American football all our life, so 2.5 hours is nothing to us really, and that's a 5-hour round trips, and that's just for training. So, I guess that if I was going to support a team that I really like, then that's not really an issue for me. 2.5 hours is nothing. But really, I think most people would say about an hour.
I would say 2.5. I think is too much for most people.
Yes, I would say probably an hour.
From my point of view, I think really it comes down to 3 things for how far you'd travel. One, the quality of what you're seeing. You know, people have shown they'll travel, for effectively, okay, you're talking about the NFL and college, for example, but we'll travel to the States to go and see these things.
Yeah, I mean, even Wembley as an example would back that. Would back that up. People travel, for several days to go and have a Wembley experience.
So I think the quality of what you're seeing is a massive factor. The second one for me is the overall experience of it. Generally just, if you go and it's a good day out and, you can have a pint in the stands or whatever, and it's a great laugh, then generally, you're going to travel further. And I guess the third thing, and this is more of a plastic fan stance in some ways, is whether your team's winning or not. As much as I'm sure there's a lot of fans out there that go, no, never, not with my team.
The thing is, whatever we do, Chris, we can only ever get 50% of that right, can't we?
Absolutely, and like, you know, it's one of the things you can never guarantee is, you know, if a team's, you know, going to win. I mean, that's kind of is what it is. But I think that's why it does come down to sort of that. What's the quality you're seeing, and, you know, what's the overall experience like? Like, just, you know, generally, like, I know back when it was on the go, like we had a brief discussion with Jeff Reinbold about the NFL Europe, and I genuinely believe the interest today would be tenfold what it was when it was in existence. But I think more because we now know how to do things a bit better as well, and make it overall a great experience.
Yeah. I mean, you're right, and I think, judging on the last, you know, we deliberately released our video on Super Bowl weekend because we wanted to get some exposure on, you know, even people who don't normally follow American football are aware of the Super Bowl. And judging on the reaction we've had in the last 2 weeks, you know, there are a lot of people that think what you think. You know, we've had amazing response. You just, you know, beyond any of our expectations, times 10.
Yeah, well, that's good. I mean, one thing that we had, and Chris is right in this, is that it's the experience the whole day. Like, it's not just the game; it's everything that goes on. When we had a sponsor once that wanted cheerleaders and food and programs and all this stuff, and it drew a bigger crowd. Like, at points we're up over 300 people, and then we stood in a field that you had to have one leg longer than the other. So it's
I wasn't going to mention it, sure.
So, but that's the thing, is that it can happen if you build a fan experience.
But it's not just on game day either. I mean, we've spent a lot of time. We've got another meeting coming up next week with a digital marketing agency who are going to, you know, work with us on the project, and it's about engaging with fans. You know, when it's not game day as well. You know, with fantasy football and with other involvement. You know, stats, for instance, right? That's my bugbear with British football. Okay, why doesn't any British football teams do stats?
I do.
Give me that answer, please.
Chris does.
You should see the length and breadth of my stat sheets.
Right, but okay, let me rephrase the question, Chris. Why aren't they published anywhere? Why is and unless every team does them, they're meaningless anyway.
Yeah,
because who can say, you know, Sean Breen, quarterback at Aberdeen from this period to this period through, you know, so many touches. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not there.
I mean, my whole role with stats was I made them available. I put in the graft. I did the time. I made them available. What was done with them was up to somebody else, and that's as far as I took it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would have liked to have seen them, you know, published or whatever, so they were coming up and people could follow and, you know, that sort of thing. But yeah, I definitely understand from that point of view, because it was one of my bugbears.
I mean, honestly, Mick, we started up a company on the back of this. So we have our own company that does analysis, not just of American football, but it's all based off of the stuff that Chris used to do just for our team. And so we do have that, but you're right, not many teams do. I think I've seen Durham Saints have a guy that does it, and I would guess that Tamworth and Manchester and London teams have it. But really, I would say from our personal experience, which isn't hugely extensive, that it made a difference between us getting to Division 1 and not even winning playoff games. We'd get to playoff games, we'd get beat. And then the years we started properly using stats and breaking down game film was the year we went all the way and then got promoted to Division 1. So it does make a massive difference. It's just the time I think a lot of people don't have for it, which is, at the end of the day, it's a volunteer kind of position.
Well, that's always a difficult situation, isn't it?
Yeah. So I guess the next question is, so obviously you're saying there about you don't want to do it through existing teams just now because they're too embedded. So have you reached out to any of the teams to see if they'd be interested, or have any of the teams contacted you?
Not yet, and we wouldn't be averse to teams contacting us. That's not true. Actually, we have had one conversation with one team. Yeah, we wouldn't be averse to that, but it would be on a strict franchise basis. So, it wouldn't be. So we're looking at two models at the moment. We're looking at a model where we own all the teams, still central control. And then there's another model where there's still some central control, but they would be franchised. And each franchise would still have, some element of UKFL control. Because what we don't want is we don't want somebody coming in, throwing a shitload of money at it, getting, 20 Americans in and just winning every game 100-0. That's not the purpose of this. We want to keep it equal. We're going to do we're going to try and do a draft, for instance, when we've got the imports highlighted. So we'll pick 40 players, and then players will pick for the draft like they do in the NFL. They can franchise if they want after the second year. They can keep a player if they want to. They can trade if they want. But we want to try and get it as interactive and as fan-based as we can, because they're the ones that are going to put their money in it. Without that, we're not going to be successful.
Yeah. There you go, Chris.
Sorry. So obviously you're speaking about you want to try and keep that competitive balance, as we say. So is the general idea that you want to have sort of like a salary cap or like is it that sort of system, or what you kind of look at?
So we'll have three grades of player, A, B, and C. So the A would be the import players. They'd be paid X amount, and the next level would be the better British/European players who would get a lower amount, and then at the bottom level they would probably just get expenses and stuff. But at no stage will any player pay any money.
Right.
Not
which is a huge thing that we do just now.
Yeah.
I guess that was going to be one of my questions later. Is that would all players on the roster be paid the same? But obviously that answers that question. So how do you plan on to raise money and attract investors to this? Is it just through social media works?
No, we've my background, my job, if you like, is financial services. So I've got quite a number of connections in those fields, and I've worked on a couple of projects similar in different industries, raising money through EIS schemes and what have you. So there's myself, and we've just taken on a member of staff who works with me. So that's what we're going to be doing for the next 12 months, raising money.
Right.
And there will be an element of crowdfunding. At some point, we're going to get some crowdfunding. So the crowdfunding will allow, supporters, players, coaches, anybody to, you can invest from 10 quid.
Right.
Upwards.
So that's what I was about to say there. So how do you become an investor? Is this
you just send me a check? You just send me a check, cash. No, on a serious point. Generally, when you make an investment, it's a serious conversation. So generally, we would speak to you, find out what your involvement needs to be. So is it purely investment for return? Is it investment because you want to promote a product? Is it, there's lots and lots of reasons people put money into projects, and understanding that. So we are registered as an EIS. I don't know if you saw that on the video. Now, most people won't know what the hell that is, but in financial services, it's a government-run scheme that's run by the Revenue and Customs that allows people to invest into high-risk companies, and that's what we are, a high-risk company, because it's not been done before, and get tax benefits from that.
Right.
So anyone that's going to invest, if they've got an accountant or if they've got a financial advisor they work with, they will know what an EIS scheme is, and almost without question, they will say it's a good thing to do, because if you've got a tax bill of 50 grand, if you pay that tax bill, you're not seeing any of that money ever again. It's gone forever. But if you invest it into an EIS company, there's a chance that you might get some return.
Right. Okay. I know nothing about money and finances, to be honest with you, but that sounds like it's something that.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't finalised it yet, but we've got like a detailed investment summary which explains all the tax benefits and explains it in I was going to say plain English, but I'm talking to two Scotsmen. in plain language that would most people would be able to understand.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
But EIS really the only people that need to get involved with EIS is people who are businessmen who have got money and are used to investing in stuff. The man on the street, the working man, if you like, would probably use crowdfunding, where it can be anything from £10, to 4,000 or 5,000 would probably be the limit on crowdfunding. But they get. So we're going to link some fan benefits with the crowdfunding, based on the sliding scale. So at a certain level, you might get tickets. At another level, you might get merchandise. Another level, you might get corporate hospitality. It's we want to get people involved because they love the sport, but we've also got to cater for the pure investor that just wants money.
Yeah, which is obviously nowadays is quite a thing. Someone saying here, there's a good comment here, saying that the overall cost of the day's experience is key.
Mm-hmm.
So that's right. Again, if you're including your travel, your ticket to the game, your food and all that, you want it to be a good experience.
Absolutely. And we're conscious that in the office today we were having a conversation about this. How many miles people would travel, and is there something we could do for people who have to travel more than an accepted amount? Well, I don't know if that's workable or not, but we are conscious that it's not just the game ticket; it's the travel to get, especially if you're coming with a family. You've got 4 tickets to buy, transport to get there. Everybody's got to eat, drink. Probably twice, not just one meal. So it becomes expensive.
Yeah, I guess it was. I mean, for pitches, Edinburgh rugby team have just put up a brand new pitch right beside Murrayfield, have they not? A lovely new stand and everything like that. I think someone else has posted in here an option for a stadium here.
Again, we would ask for feedback on that, because we're in a small office in the northeast of England. We can't know every stadium, and even if you Google whack it, it'll bring some up, but it doesn't bring them all up. And there's nothing better than local knowledge. So if people have got that Butts one that someone just mentioned there, we have got on our list. But if you've got a stadium that you particularly like and you think is suitable, then send it down. We'll have a look at it.
Yeah, that's good. The other question here I've got is, something that was mentioned in your post was about going stateside. And actually, this one's probably generated quite a lot of questions to us. Is why is there a need to go stateside with everything that's in Europe and the UK? Is there a need
for
the
camps? You mean?
Yeah,
because it's easier to go to take a small team of coaches to America to see more players than it is to bring all those players over here to try out.
And it's easier to do that than to take the small team of coaches around some of the European main cities round about here.
Yeah, but not all the player talent will be in Europe. Some of them will be in America. So we're going to do European ones as well, and we're going to do British ones as well. But for the import players, we will be working primarily, in the States. And we may do a couple because of distance, because traveling in America it's like traveling in Europe, isn't it? It's as far to go from there. So we just feel we get a broader view of the talent by being there.
Yeah, well, I guess the thing is there's a lot more expertise over there as well, and folk will know what they're looking for. And there's obviously, someone's mentioned here as well. I'll just pop up saying Canada as well. Obviously, Canada's got their own football league, and there is a lot of expertise over there. And there's probably a lot of people that once you get to a certain stage in American football in the States, if you don't make it, that's it. Like there isn't such a thing as an amateur league over there.
No, that's right. Yeah.
I've spoke to a few Americans that have come over here to play that have said that once you're done, you're done. Like you kind of just go play on a Sunday, and I think that's probably to do with a lot of the safety risks and that, and insurance costs a fortune
there's
over
a lot
there.
of people in that category that would give the right arm to play another 3-4 years at a good level.
Yeah, Well, that's what obviously when we were speaking about NFL Europe earlier, that's what I used to do. When we spoke to Jeff a couple of weeks ago, he was saying that guys used to come over here, and I think the one that stuck with me the most was when he was speaking about the Bengals secondary player that came over here.
Right.
And he was signed onto a contract with the Bengals, and he came over here, and he just didn't perform. So the Bengals saved themselves 10 million by not having to sign the guy.
Right.
And that was something that I never thought of it on the negative side. I always thought of it on the positive side. You know what I mean? I never thought of that at all until he was speaking about it. But obviously, there is guys that from over there that can play many more years at what we would class as a top level player over here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Hey, do you have any more questions for Mick, Chris?
No, I think, as I say, I've kind of asked what was kind of on in my head about it as well. I guess on a slightly lighter note, once you've kind of chose the areas, what's the protocol going to be for team names?
Well, we haven't decided yet. We did discuss putting it out and letting people, come up with suggestions and ideas and votes. I mean, that's how the Newcastle Vikings happened. That's what we did there. We did want some historic reference to it, and it started off that the Vikings invaded Northumberland, and they came up the Tyne and blah 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 blah. So something similar to that, but on a nationwide thing, and we're not sure whether to go with cities or areas. Because cities can be. So, as an example, if the Northwest team is called Manchester something, are Liverpool fans going to go? And vice versa, if it's called the Liverpool something, are Manchester fans going to go? Same in Newcastle and Sunderland. Will the soccer rivalries outweigh it, or does it need to be the Northwest?
Yeah.
Something. Do you know what I mean? Or
it makes sense.
Yeah. So, we know. We haven't decided any names yet. Next thing we're going to decide is the stadia and the areas and the coverage. And then once we've done that, then we can go with names, and we'll try and make them relevant to the area and with some historic significance if we can. And similarly, then we will go on to colours and logos. And again, if there's a reason for someone to play in red or to play in blue, then it makes sense.
Just don't copy any logos, because Graham Hub's creator absolutely despises that. He created don't copy any logos that already exist, because Graham Hub's creator created a whole new line of terrible logos for people that copy. So stay away from that one. Yeah, about that. Someone just asked an interesting question here on visas. Yeah. So I don't know anything about that, and
I do.
So are they difficult to get for people coming and playing semi-professional?
Working visas are, yeah. I mean, there's two ways you can do it. You can, as a UK limited company, which we are, we can employ people into those positions. And the criteria is with the visa office is that so coaches and star players would they're doing a job that is difficult to fill with British people. It ticks that box, yeah. So we would get visas that way, working visas. There is an alternative way we can do it. If that doesn't work, we can just set up a US-based company, and they'd be employed through the US but work in the UK. So there's loads of ways you can do it.
Didn't know that. I just know that when people we've had want to move over here, it makes it extremely
difficult. I think it's different. It's different because most people who come over here are students to play, and it's a completely different ball game there.
Yeah, because I think they can do. I think some of the universities have scholarship schemes.
Yeah,
where you can come over and study and play.
Yeah,
so that's totally different.
They're allowed to work as well.
Right. So could you
come over as on a student visa, they can play football, they can study, and they can work 20 hours a week.
So is there potential for you guys to dip into that kind of area with universities and say, like, we want guys to play in our league. You guys have the facilities to offer them education.
Yeah.
Can you help us out here?
Yep. All those things are doable.
Here's one here. Yeah. We'll retain more nationals because of Brexit. I wouldn't actually be surprised, but it's the talent. Okay.
Yeah, we're still doing the research on that, but yeah, I mean, common sense says we would.
Yeah.
And we don't care where they're from. By the way, there's only one criteria to get in play in our league: are they good enough?
Yeah. Well,
that's it.
That's a good criteria to have in the first place, anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, have you got any more questions for Mike?
No, I'm good.
There's not really any more questions coming on the chat, so thank you very much for joining us, Mick.
Pleasure, anytime.
And hopefully keep us up to date as well.
We will, yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a moving feast, so I'm sure there'll be other times where we might need a bit of help from you and your customers. So we'll, but right now we're focusing on raising money, which is it's what we're doing first.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Best of luck to you.
No problem. See you later. Okay, so we'll answer. There's a few extra things in here that we'll maybe have a quick look at, but it was interesting to hear some of the stuff that's there because really most of us know very little about this. So for people that have never seen a semi-pro setup, one of the things that has become very recently, if you don't know me, I'm very interested in swimming. I have been for years. So they've now set up their first professional league, and they've done exactly what he's speaking about. So they went and they had a lot of investor money behind them. So they went in and created teams. The London Roar, Standard Energy, which I can't remember where they're supposed to be based, Cali Condors, which are over obviously in America, DC Trident, they're America, and then there's Team Iron, which I think are based in Hungary. So, and they all come together and they do meets different places around the world, and the finals were in Las Vegas, and the finals were nuts, like on poolside DJ, each event. And honestly, it was like a collegiate meet. And I think if that's the kind of thing they're going for, then there is a possibility. But again, it is money based at the end of the day. It seems to be.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, these kind of things you have to drum up the interest. And as I say, there's sort of two main factors, but the third factor does play into that, and that's why the competitive advantage is so important. Because ultimately, with the way we look at Britball at the moment, do we, is semi-pro the way forward? Possibly. I mean, we'll I guess we'll find out. But I think there needs to be something to establish that competitive balance, because ultimately, if you end up with the equivalent of the London Warriors playing Hastings Conquerors every week, then nobody's going to be interested in it because it's just not going to be a fair fight. So, yeah, I mean, there's certainly merit to it. It's just about getting that interest in the product.
Yeah, there's a few little comments here we'll go through before we end. So this one's for you.
No comment.
Chris is a ref, but he can't comment on any of this stuff.
I'm training to be an official, but I couldn't possibly.
He can't comment, but you're right here. But he is right. So it would be nice if BAFA and BAFRA could come out with something. And I know you won't comment on it because for obvious reasons, but it would be nice if they come out just to say, yeah, if this is the case and this season wants to go ahead, we'll support it. We can support it. We have enough people in place. Or no, we don't have enough people in place. We can't support this, and then that kind of puts the shutter on that. Oh, I wish I'd asked this. Dad, did you meet Sean Payton when he played QB for Leicester Panthers? There was one more. I was here. I think Campbell brings up a good point here. I feel the UK was heavily NFL influenced in the 80s, and it's just stuck. Whereas the influence of US coaches and players through mainland Europe has seen those leagues stick closer to college. And I think that's something I was saying there, is that even with the swimming, is if you create like collegiate, that's the best way to go. the collegiate system in America is by far the best sports setup I think there is planet wide. The fans they get is ridiculous. The money, the setup, the experience you get is second to none. And you'll be able to back me up on this one, is that we've been to a few college games now in America, and they're mental. I mean, the NFL games are brilliant. Don't get me wrong. Like, we've been to a few of those in their class, but the collegiate games we've been to in America are next level experience.
I think part of that as well, this whole Sunday being the day of football, I guess, is ultimately the UK is a football country, round kind. So, doing things on a Saturday then obviously comes into collision course with that. Now I appreciate, obviously, the adult season is from April to August time, and there's obviously a large gap in there when football isn't being played. But I think generally that's kind of the idea that nothing happens on a Saturday, because Saturday at 3:00 is football time, despite the fact that throughout this lockdown that seems to have vanished completely, and it's now 7 p.m. on a Monday and 4 p.m. on a Tuesday or whatever. But
there's two games on just now.
I think generally that's why it's stuck in Sunday, and whether moving to Saturday is something's viable, I'm not sure. I mean, I know it's we discussed earlier the whole idea about what a season might look like, but one thing we didn't really touch on is like the availability of pitches. Now, not everybody has access to their own pitch, and you've got by the time that football kickstarts again, you're going to have rugby teams and football teams, and everybody's going to be clamoring to get their pitches for as much as possible. So is another way to work it forward, is to host tournaments like similar to the women's and the youth and junior setup, where 2, 3, 4 teams come into a place for a day or a weekend and play games, and that's how things happen. I don't know, but
a weekend of football sounds all right.
It doesn't sound too bad actually when you say it like that. But like, knowing how I've felt on some Monday mornings, I'm not really sure I'd be keen to get up the next day and go and play a second game. But
True.
yeah, I mean, there's still so many questions about how anything this year could go forward. Right now, obviously, there's a timeline for things in England, but as I say, I mean, we don't know if that'll come to anything. I think the general statement that went out was speaking about things kickstarting again at the end of March, and I'm not sure that's how I read into it. I think that's what I said to you when I read the actual timeline. I didn't look at it and say, oh, that means we can go back on the 29th of March. But then I'm no expert, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, we'll wait and see. I'm sure a lot of us hope we can. But yeah,
we'll see. We'll see. There's one last question here from Camel. It's a monster. He's saying investor in exclamation marks, but he's right in what he says below. Crowdfunding is a good idea. Actually, where the clubs should better market their sponsorship opportunities. He's saying Australian football clubs have all sorts of memberships, some linked to merchandise, some to online streaming. I guess obviously now, the NBA they've all got rights to everything, do they not? I don't watch much basketball, but I know they've got rights to ticket sales and TV revenues and everything like that. So that's interesting. Some would have part season tickets, and it's kind of same thing. You choose to donate via your membership, and there's a reward for different. So I guess what he's saying there is that there is loads of different ways to do it, and it'll be around which way they choose to do it that will be interesting. But we'll see.
I think we spoke about the whole ice hockey thing in Aberdeen. I know there's teams elsewhere that have done similar, but I went down to sort of my first game, and you basically bought a ticket at the gate for £2.50, and you picked your seat because it was empty. And then I tried to go to a game a couple of years down the line, and in 2 weeks in advance of the game, it was sold out, and you couldn't actually get a seat. So and I mean, I guess both things. Like, it's about appreciating that American football isn't just a minority sport in the UK; it's a niche sport. But yeah, I think there needs to be a considerable effort into the marketing and advertising of the game. But whether this is the way to do it, we'll find out.
We've had 3 more questions come in. So one of them's from Dad. So a big reason why Sundays were better was because most amateur players, it was easier not working on a Sunday. Well, that's probably about right. From the teams we've played, that seems to be a situation.
This one, the teams we play for, everyone seemed to be suspiciously working on Sundays.
Yeah, until game day. Remember, having 2 seasons cancelled wouldn't be mentally good for players, coaches, and refs. Again, I agree.
I think I'd quite like to take that one, to be honest. Yeah, I understand that, and I think it's a difficult one. Ultimately, we're kind of tied by what the restrictions are, but there is that kind of flip side to, the mental side of it is hugely important, but also putting 100 people in a game together, locker rooms that are normally 3x4, and everyone's getting changed on top of each other and stuff like that. You've got there has to be that consideration of sort of the safety element in that respect as well. I'd love for there to be a season. I really would. And certainly from a mental well-being standpoint, trust me, I understand that. But I think there's a lot needs to go into consideration that would probably ultimately rule it out before that would rule it in, I guess.
Yeah. And then there's one last comment here saying the BAFA have moved the NWFL to parallel the seniors' summer season, not winter. So that's interesting. I didn't know that. But yeah, I think we're right. I think they're right. Is that there's so many variables at the moment that we just don't know, and I think we'll have to wait and see what BAFA eventually come up with. As I say, for our own opinion, fees this year and next covered in a winner most definitely should be the first thing, because that would cover, even if it wasn't a competitive season, it would cover scrimmages, it would cover friendlies, it would cover potentially inter-county matches, all that kind of stuff would be covered in your insurances and that. But it would also cover a proper season next year, and people wouldn't be so hesitant to pay. And we're not being harsh here. Like, we understand why BAFA did it, and we're not criticizing BAFA for the way they did it. But no matter which way you put it, people will be hesitant to pay those fees again, knowing that there might not be a season, and if there is a season, it might not even be competitive. So, it's something for them to decide and take into consideration anyway. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We're going to call it a day there. Obviously, thanks to Mick for joining us and answering a lot of our questions that we'd had from people against some of our articles and some that had popped up over the last few weeks. And we'll see you again soon, hopefully. Thank you very much.
Cheers.